And KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. Blessed to be a part of your day. Joining us now from American Commitment, our great friend Phil Kerpen. Phil, we hear energy prices are going to go up. Is this good news?
Well, I always prefer low prices at the pump myself, and so it's not great news if you're paying more. It's obviously good news if you're in the oil industry, which has had some down years and some lean times, really, as the Saudis tried to drop the barrel price and sort of destroy their North American competitors, which failed, by the way. The only thing they did was destroy the country of Venezuela. America weathered the storm. Our oil industry weathered the storm of low prices pretty well. And so, on balance, higher energy prices are a little bit of a drag on the economy overall, although they are good for that sector. But I don't think we're going to see anything crazy. I don't think we're going back to a $100 barrel price or anything like that. So we'll see what happens. It's always hard to predict. But I think the real lesson of the last few years is, we're a dominant producer now. If we're not number one, we're going to be number one in the world very soon. Russia, I think, is still number one. We're probably going to pass them this year or next year. And so we're not as vulnerable to these external price shocks as we used to be, and that's a good thing. And we're going to keep developing American resources under this administration.
That's what I don't get is we've become so energy independent compared to where we were, Phil, in the olden times in the 70s with the oil embargo and everything else. How in the world can anybody justify gas prices going up at all when we ship our excess gas to other parts of the world?
Well, it's these markets are pretty complex, and it depends where you are in the country. Sort of, we in the Northeast, we're very tied into European markets and the North Sea price of crude because a lot of the refined products come over from Europe, and it's very tied into that market. In the middle of the country, it is much more based on what the U.S. domestic price is, and so it's we're in a global economy. And if you tried to say, hey, we're not going to do exports, we're going to try to keep all of that in the U.S. Well, the transportation costs for bringing some of these resources inside the U.S. could be higher than bringing them from other places in the world, and so these markets develop in all kinds of different ways. And the beauty of having a free market system or a relatively free market system is. It doesn't always go the way you might have predicted, but it generally goes the way that is the most efficient way. And so I'd be hesitant to step in and say, well, maybe if we had less international trade, we'd have lower prices. Usually it doesn't work that way.
Our great friend Phil Kerpen joining us from American Commitment. Kevin Miller in the morning here on KIDO Talk Radio. So let's talk a little bit more about the tax reform and regulatory relief, making that permanent, Phil.
Yeah, this is a big idea that we're pushing now at American Commitment, which is, instead of trying to do another heavy lift legislatively this year, like the infrastructure bill that the White House wants, Congress, in our judgment, should really focus on making permanent what's already been accomplished, which is considerable. This is the biggest tax reform in, 30-some years on the individual side and the corporate side, major changes to the tax code that directly benefit millions and millions and millions of taxpayers. Almost every, 90% plus of taxpayers are getting tax relief. But because of the Democratic filibuster and the process they needed to use to pass that bill, a lot of those tax cuts notionally expire after 2025. Well, why don't we have a vote this year on making them all permanent? And that way we can see where the Democrats line up on that, because this is their big political talking point. They're saying, well, yeah, but these tax cuts are temporary. What they don't say is they're temporary because of the Democratic filibuster that forced them not to be permanent. So I'd like to see Congress really make an effort to make those permanent, and pass or fail, we'd be able to see where every member of Congress and of the Senate lines up on that, which I think would be very useful politically. And then in addition to the tax side, we think equally important is making the regulatory reforms permanent. And, the Trump administration has undone almost every one of, the outrageous, excessive, burdensome regulations from Obama, either completely or they are in the process of undoing them in just their first year, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it. But, Kevin, if they can undo all of these in a year, the next time there's a Democratic president, they could put all of them back in, and more and worse. And so in order to really have permanent regulatory relief, we think you've got to pass the REINS Act, which is the bill that says that a president can't impose major economic regulations without first getting approval from Congress. And that way we get all these cleared out under Trump, Then if you do have a future president who tries to put major expensive regulations back in, he won't be able to do so unilaterally with a pen and a phone. He'd have to actually get support in Congress and have votes and have political accountability for that. And so those are really, we think, the two top priorities for this year are not to try to do more and try to do new things in Congress, but really to lock in and make permanent what's already been accomplished on both taxes and regulatory reform.
Our great friend Phil Kerpen joining us here, KIDO Talk Radio from American Commitment. What would be the economic impact of making these permanent?
Well, I think it just relieves a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in the future. And right now, the markets are pretty confident that the tax cuts are going to be in place and they're going to last. And of course, that expiration is 7 years away, and that seems like an eternity. Although it can happen fast. I remember when the Bush tax cuts passed and the expiration was 10 years away, and it seemed like the next day we were debating their expiration, and they came up, and actually we were able to make almost all of those permanent, but it wasn't easy. We remember we had the fiscal cliff and all the upheaval, and finally Obama allowed most of those tax cuts to be made permanent. And so it's not a major short-term economic boost, but it's a significant. It would significantly relieve tension, anxiety, the potential in the future that that taxes might go back up, and over time, as we got closer to that expiration date, that would become more of a real problem that would affect behavior and affect the economic environment. So that's important. The regulatory side is probably even more important, though, Kevin, because as much as there is enormous business confidence right now, especially in the manufacturing sector, and they're very optimistic about all these regulations being cleared out. The extent of that optimism right now only runs through the end of the current presidential term, because everyone knows that the next president could reverse all of those policies again on his own, and there's really no check on that with our current system, which allows regulations to be put in and removed entirely within the executive branch. And so it entirely depends on the outcome of presidential elections. I think that if you pass something like the REINS Act and you gave these companies the certainty to know that, look, in the future, if there's going to be a major regulation, it's got to get a vote in Congress first, which means you can hold your members of Congress accountable, your senators, you can lobby them, you can have a public political process around them. They're going to have much, much more confidence that we're going to have a stable, long-term regulatory environment. And I think that would be a major positive for investment. As much as we're already seeing a lot of investment, a big investment boom right now, I think removing the fear and the uncertainty that the regulatory environment could flip as easily as the next presidential election would be a pretty significant additional positive on top of all of that. And so I think it's easy to say, well, we can think about that sometime in the future. We've already got good policies in place. We don't need to worry about locking them in. The sooner you can lock these things in, the better, especially when you consider, Kevin, we don't know if Republicans are going to control Congress next year. I hope they do, but we don't know whether they're going to. And so this could be their last chance this year to lock these gains in and have them last into the next presidential administration.
Phil, you make a great point, and that is the scary part when we take a look at the House and what could be coming down the road, and what a different world we'd be living in if Hillary Clinton had won and how close that election was. We keep living in an ADD, instant gratification world, and we just have to go back to most people had Hillary Clinton winning on election night.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, here's the thing. The Democrats nominated basically the worst candidate in the history of the world, and they only lost by, less than 100,000 votes across 3 states. That's how close this was to going the other way, even when they nominated a really, really bad candidate. And so it's hard for Republicans to win presidential elections the way the country is right now. Let's not forget that. And so we've really got to make these accomplishments last when we have the, Republicans in the way we do right now.
Phil Kerpen, we always appreciate you. Thank you, brother.
My pleasure, Kevin. Have a good one.
Our great friend Phil Kerpen from American Commitment. And really, that's really where we are today. Coming up next, Tucker Carlson echoes the comments that we've had on this program concerning the president, the presidency, and due process. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll take a look at the fight to keep the Second Amendment here in the state of Idaho at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And we're going to take a look at these stores that have decided they're not going to sell firearms to anyone under 21. Do you think that's a good move? I can't wait to hear what you have to say next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's take some phone calls here. Let's go to Christian in Weezer. Christian, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Regarding these companies, they're like, well, we're not going to sell to anyone that's, under 21 years old. If you go back to the history of it, how many school shootings were these kids? I mean, the ones that did the shootings that actually owned the guns, went and bought the guns, probably their parents' guns. I mean, that's not really going to stop anything, and it's just a typical one of the knee-jerk reactions by the left. And, oh, no, let's do this, let's do that. No, they never think it through, and apparently they never will. But I say let them. Fine. Because, places like Dick's Sporting Goods, it's, predominantly, I'm sure, conservative customers. And, fine. Then I'm not going to shop at Dick's.
And Christian, let's face it, how many AR-15s does Dick's or Walmart really sell, or Kroger or Fred Meyer for that matter?
Here's what's funny. I actually, it was like a month ago, I went here in Ontario, Oregon. I across the border, and I went just to see what they had. And I'm walking up. First time I've been in there. And which one was it? Was it Dick's? I'm not sure, but I think it was. And I see the gun case and all these revolvers and all these handguns, just beautiful displays. I'm walking up and I thought, wow, look at this. And I walked up, I'm like, wait, that was a pellet gun. Wait a minute. They're all pellet guns. That's all they had. So, and yeah, they didn't have anything that, not much of a selection, in other words. But
but then you have the libs going, oh, look at how great they are. They're the best ever. And you're thinking, well, they sold 2 guns the entire year.
Right. It's like I said, it's a knee-jerk reaction by the companies because, you have these trolls out there that attack and, can't do that, can't sell them, can't. And the companies panic and go, oh, crap, we have to appease these people. And, the main reason is because that's what the media covers. Not necessarily the majority of American people think or feel the same. It's just what gets emblazoned across the screen in the media. And then we come to things like this. It's a bad state of affairs, but I wish I'd like to see a lot more like shows like yours, would go countrywide, nationwide, televised, and get it out there a little more.
Look,
I don't know.
I'm blessed, Christian, to be here with you. And, if we can build a community here and reinforce the values here, that's not so bad. I don't think the country really wants to be saved, especially with all the good people coming here and some not so good people from California. I don't think, or New York or East Coast. I don't think they want to be saved. And quite frankly, if we can take care of ourselves here, then we're all the better.
I think that's actually the problem on the left is they do want to be saved. They don't know what to do to help themselves. So help us, government. Help us. The government will know. The government will save us. And then you get the Hollywood elites and them dictating what the government should do. Oh, yeah, well, you're right. And so this is what the government should do to help us. This is what it can do to save us. And in the end, it's completely wrong. It's the opposite of what we need. So, yeah. Like I said, I got a 7-year-old boy, and I just, every day, look at this, shaking my head, thinking, what kind of world is he going to be in? I mean, am I going to want to be in Idaho in 10 years? Like you guys were speaking of earlier, with all the people flooding in from California, and Boise is pretty liberal, and that's, the main hub of the whole state, and it's a scary thing. I mean, it's how socialism spread across history, and in the end, they took the guns, and anyone can do their own little bit of research and see what happened every time the guns were taken away. What Stalin did, what Hitler did. Gosh, I was looking it up the other day, and there was so many I didn't even realize, I hadn't even heard of, that, you know, the guns were taken and then pretty much genocide. And people think that we're safe here, you know, and we are, but it doesn't mean it can't change. Doesn't mean it can't turn really, really ugly overnight. And, you know, we have to constantly fight against that, you know.
Well, that's why we're here, Christian, and that's why people always go, oh, Kevin, you've got it made. Look, here today, gone tomorrow in this business, and that's what they do to folks, and that's happened to me before, and that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, look at Bill O'Reilly.
Look at O'Reilly, exactly. And if they can get Bill O'Reilly, they can get the Big Millie. I'll see you, brother.
All right, man. God bless you.
God bless you, Christian. Let's see, 825. I love that Big Millie thing. Anyway, the Big Millie who needs the... Anyway, traffic and weather together, 825. And we continue on. Let's go to Jim in Boise with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Jim.
Hello, Kevin. I'll give you the other side, kind of. I'm not in the market for a gun, but I did buy some Dick's Sporting Goods stock. So, raw.
Ah.
So.
Is that it?
That is it. I just wanted to, I don't know, whatever. I got inspired. If you want some inspiration, look on their website and look up how Dick's Sporting Goods got started. I mean, that is a real American, so to speak, success story. So that's it.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Walt in Nampa. It's been a while. Good morning, Walt.
Oh, good morning. I've been listening to all this gun control routine. I got a question. What is the city in the United States that has the highest crime rate? Shootings, killings, drugs, etc.
Chicago.
What do you think it is?
Chicago.
Yeah, well, most everybody agrees to that. What city in the world has the lowest crime rate?
I don't know.
Geneva, Switzerland. 2 points. One, every other household owns a firearm. And as backups, there's a social cities. And they have mandatory military conscription at age 18 or 17, I forget which. In other words, every male has to go to the military. Does that tell you something? They get it over out of their system, and they figure out who the guys that are dickwits and get rid of them. The Marine Corps gave me my first fully automatic weapon at 17 years old. And I didn't go out to commit mayhem because I knew better by that time. So the point is that there are things that we can do without, outlawing guns. You asked me the other day, what did I think of Walmart's getting rid of their black guns? I was in to buy some cat food one day, and as I do, I walked by the gun rack. And it turned out it was 2 days before they announced that they were going to stop selling black guns. Here's all the black guns with price tags on them. I said, what's going on? He said, we're getting rid of them. I said, oh, really? I said, how much are we talking about here? And by the time he told me and got the Colt AR-15 LE-20 out of the showcase, my American Express card was on the counter. I really hadn't intended to buy an AR-15. I really didn't care about it one way or the other. But when I decided maybe it's time to own one. So anyway, all you folks out there that want to get rid of AR-15s, just remember, they're a damn good weapon, home self-defense weapon for old people. Because they're light, they're easy to handle, and there's not a great amount of recoil.
Words to live by, Walt. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. More of your thoughts next concerning Dick's, concerning Walmart, concerning everybody getting rid of the AR-15s. Is this a time to buy? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
We've had enough of the lies, the sanctimony, the arrogance, the hatred, the pettiness, the fake news. We are done with your agenda to undermine voters' will and individual liberty in America. So to every lying member of the media, to every Hollywood phony, to the role model athletes who use their free speech to alter and undermine what our flag represents, to the politicians who would rather watch America burn than lose 1 ounce of their own personal power, to the late-night hosts who think their opinions are the only opinions that matter, to the Joyanne Reeds, the Morning Joes, the Mikas, to those who stain honest reporting with partisanship, to those who bring bias and propaganda to CNN, the Washington Post, and the New York Times, your time is running out.
There we have it from the NRA. Kevin Miller in the morning. More of your phone calls at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We'll hear from Tom in Nampa. We'll also hear from Tea Party Bob. We'll hear from Eric and Kuna as well. Currently, we're holding for John Decker from the White House. Remember, KIDO Talk Radio is your proud home for Fox News on the radio, exclusive to the Treasure Valley. Anytime you hear some of the award-winning and certainly popular Fox personalities on the radio here in the Treasure Valley, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Again, we're proud to be associated with the great work of Fox News, and that's why we have their reporters on each and every morning, waking up on the right side of the dial. We so appreciate you joining us, or the digital dial, if you will. Our great friend John Decker joining us to start off the week of all things Donald Trump and, of course, tariffs, and more tariffs. John, good morning. Good to have you with us here at KIDO Talk Radio.
Hey, thanks a lot, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
So will tariffs be the big thing, or will we have more of the alleged intrigue involving the first son-in-law? Will that carry the week this week?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, every day last week was involved things that were unanticipated. Jared Kushner's security clearance being downgraded. No one could have predicted that. Hope Hicks leaving the White House, announcing her resignation. No one could have predicted that. And, of course, the announcement regarding huge stiff tariffs being imposed upon imported steel and imported aluminum. I don't think anybody saw that on their radar either. So hard to predict what this week will hold, but the president will indeed impose those stiff sanctions later this week.
So let's talk a little bit about Jared Kushner, and how relevant is this to folks in the heartland, what's going on with the president's son-in-law?
I don't know how relevant, Jared Kushner is to everyday Americans. I'm an everyday American, but I don't know, how it impacts me necessarily. It impacts his ability to do his job. I will tell you that. He can't do the job 100% effectively if you don't have access to all of the intelligence information that's necessary to do your job. So he's not going to do the best job that he could possibly do because he won't have access to top secret material. And that's something that the White House has been reluctant to admit. So Jared Kushner, I don't know the reason why his security clearance was downgraded, what is holding up his ability to acquire top secret clearance. He's been at the White House since day one, since the president took office in January of 2017, and he remains a senior advisor to the President of the United States. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Right, although the security clearance, General Kelly and others, do you, John, you're a reporter's reporter, so there's a lot of speculation involving the chief of staff. Is there any there?
You mean the possibility of him leaving?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I don't think so. I believe that, he's going to remain as long as the president feels that he's doing a good job, and the president does feel that. He feels that the General Kelly has brought some order to the White House since coming on board last summer. So, no, I don't see him leaving. I don't see another person being mentioned quite often as departing the administration is Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State. I don't see him leaving anytime soon either. And last week, and on top of all of the different things that were happening in terms of the news, there were rumors that H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, would soon be leaving the administration. But both the president and the White House Chief of Staff both knocked down those rumors.
John Decker joining us here at from the White House at KIDO Talk Radio. So, John, will there be any business this week? As you said, never a dull moment last week. And I know we say this all the time. Can anything top the week that we just had?
I never say never, not with this administration. The president will be meeting later today in just about an hour or so with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's Netanyahu's second visit with President Trump since the president took office last January. But no major announcements are expected out of that meeting. Netanyahu is in town for the annual APEC conference, which takes place this time of year every year. And in addition to that, the president will be meeting later this week with the Prime Minister of Sweden. So it's a week in which, and we'll have a press conference after that meeting. So it's a meeting that I think a lot of people are going to be interested in hearing what the president's comments are regarding those tariffs that he announced last week and will be imposing this week, to see if indeed he's changed his mind in any way, or if he's open to the idea of exempting any countries from those very stiff tariffs.
As you would say, John Decker, never a dull moment. We sure appreciate
That's
you.
right. That's right. Thanks a lot, Kevin. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you real soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, John. Bye-bye. Our great friend John Decker joining us. By the way, Brandon has emailed me, Kevin at KIDOTalkRadio.com. Kevin, one of your callers mentioned he'd like to see more conservative TV across the nation. You probably know about this, but many of your listeners may not. Newsmax TV on 22.1 over the airwaves. Check it out and let everybody know. Well, Brandon, you just did. That's over the airwaves on 22.1. And if you have the cable, if you have the satellite, you can check out Newsmax TV as well. Let's go to Tom in Nampa, who always fires them up on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Tom.
Oh, good morning, Kevin. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say.
Switch subjects, but before I do, I was just thinking, I had a friend down in California when I lived over on the coast some years ago. He's dead now, but he had a sign on his front door. It said, "This house guarded by shotguns 3 days a week. You guess which days." And when you pushed the doorbell, there was a gun blast in rapid succession. Needless to say, he didn't have much trouble with unsolicited people wanting to solicit door to door his house. So I just thought I'd add that.
Boy, I think that would be I think that'd be a bestseller here, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, there was something happened. It was Schumer last week that I found rather disturbing. He voted against a judicial nominee solely on because he was white. Now, he didn't actually say that, but he wanted more diversity because I guess the judge said this guy would be replacing was a black man, and so he wanted another black jurist. So I think Trump ought to look around, see if he can't find another man like Clarence Thomas. I mean, that'd really get him, wouldn't it?
Well, I'm going to let you swing on that one by yourself, brother.
Okay, well, anyway, I'm not done yet. Sometimes you kind of cut me off before I'm finished. I'll make it quick, though. And Bernie Sanders also voted against a nominee for some office because he was a Christian. And you know, it says Bernie Sanders needs to have Article 6 of the Constitution read to him, where it says no religious test shall be required to hold office in the United States of America. So I think Bernie Sanders is violating the Constitution when he does that. I think people's religious views ought to be their own right, and they ought to be kept to themselves. I really don't like it when some of these people in Idaho are saying, well, they have a biblical perspective. Well, what is that perspective? There's as many different views on religion as there are people and denominations. So I'll end with this one quote from the Bible. It's Isaiah 6:4, where it says, they will beat their their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and they'll make war no more. So, I don't know, maybe what the world needs is to have these AR-15s melted down, beat into shovels, and hand them to some of these people that claim that they never can find a job and put them to work digging a ditch. Thank you.
Eric in Cuna with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Eric.
Hey, good morning, buddy. How you doing?
I am living the dream, and you?
Doing pretty good. Hey, I wanted to talk about these companies saying they're not selling to 18-year-olds, and we're not selling AR-15s now. And you know what they think they're taking a stand and making a point and blah blah blah. What they're really doing is they're telling us all that they're controlled by fear-based media, idiotic news stories that goes on and on about all this, and we got to get rid of this, and we got to get rid of the bump stock and this. You know, what they should really be doing is addressing the real problem. You know, what the real problem is is parenting, or the lack of parenting, I should say. And, you know, I mean, me as a parent, I mean, I've always been pretty close to my kids, very close to my kids, you know, and I think just, you know, teaching kids to value life and all the different ways that a parent can teach that. You know, there's endless ways to teach that to a child and a teenager, and, you know, that's the real problem. And, you know, and it's kind of like the hive mind that the media has created to get everybody to perceive what's going on as the gun being the problem. And, you know, that kind of like, it deteriorates the perception of our country being a constitutional republic, which is everybody is individually responsible for what they do with, no matter what it is, a gun, a knife, a car, it doesn't matter. And it's, I mean, it's, you know, it's sad, but it's ridiculous the way the media just goes on and on and on addressing not the problem at all. They're not addressing the problem. And, you know, we know there's an agenda behind it. We all do. We know that they all want to eventually just take all our guns so they can control us and make us you know, their little robots or whatever the agenda is. But, you know, that's not going to happen here in America because, you know what, we're going to win. We're all winners here. And it ain't going to happen. And we're going to be keeping our creed, our Constitution, and no government entity is going to be taking it away because, you know, the government, let's face it, they are hired managers, hired by the people to do a job. And, you know, I think Donald Trump's doing his job pretty well. I don't know what that comment was the other day when he was talking about taking guns, but, you know, before I think that was probably an up the sleeve comment, you know, directed at tickling the left. I would probably say I doubt he has no intention of doing that. I'm guessing, and all the people dropping out of his cabinet. You know, you got to think. I mean, for the guy like him, it's pretty hard to trust people. So of course he's going to be saying you're fired a lot.
Sure.
I would be too. Yeah, but hey, I just wanted to make those comments about that about those companies. You know, they need to grow up and take a big. I mean, oh, we're not going to sell the AR-15. Come on, but we're going to sell all these other guns. Give me a break, man. Like, they're not, you know.
Eric,
but anyway,
great points, brother.
Hey, thanks a lot. You have a great day. God bless. Love you, brother.
Love you. God bless our friend Eric. The publisher of the Gem State Patriot joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Boy, that guy talks faster than I do.
It's kind of contrast between Eric and Tom.
You know, I got to comment on this gun thing again and this law. It's time the taxpayers of Idaho wake up and take a hard look at the Idaho swamp and the legislators who work only for themselves, the lobbyists, and the governor, not the people. It's been 4 years since we started to get our gun rights back, and we currently have concealed carry, we have campus carry, and the last important piece of this legislation is the CASEL laws. And if it wasn't for the leadership and the committee heads in the legislature that we currently have, our current gun rights would not be where they are. It's because of Greg Pruitt and the ISAA. When you look at Tom Lurcher, the head of the committee, and others that have been running interference for Governor Otter on a more liberal gun laws for years, Lurcher needs to be voted out of office. He is nothing but a blockade for freer Second Amendment laws. You know, the problem getting good legislation passed is legislative leadership block the bills. So let's start at the top with the gubernatorial candidates, like Lieutenant Governor Brad Little. Here's a guy who espouses a hearty love for the Second Amendment and says so in his political commercials, yet I don't remember a time that he has actually stood up for good gun legislation that we have tried to pass. That would give us more liberal gun laws. Instead, he's just remained silent, as he is doing now. Speaker Bedke's next in line, as he has a lot to say about who runs the committees and makes up the control and basically he's controlled by Governor Otter. You know, Otter maintains that we're the reddest of the red states. Well, that's a lot of bull. Does anyone remember the state health care exchange? It's time for new leadership. Let's hear what Congressman Labrador and Tom Oquist have to say about this bill. Let them weigh in and use their influence to get 444 passed. Let's find out if they are conservatives and where they stand. It's time we acted like conservatives in this state, that we're the ones that we're billed as. And it's time to start taking the politicians to task. Let me wake up the taxpayers. House Bill 563, currently floating in the swamp, that passed our supposedly conservative Health and Welfare Committee run by Fred Wood, or as I call him, Deadwood. This bill, if passed, will turn over $29 million to Planned Parenthood, giving them more money for abortions. Idaho is supposed to be a strong pro-life state. Let's prove it by calling and emailing the legislators. Tell them to kill Bill HB 563 and pass 444, or explain why they don't. It's time to get our legislators in tune with the citizens of Idaho. Either that or get the heck out of Dodge, because they are the problem.
Thank you, Tea Party Bob, GemStatePatriot.com. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And we continue on. Great Monday. Appreciate all of you. And let's go to Liberal Steve at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberal Steve.
And what a fine morning it is here in the beautiful state of Idaho. What I don't understand, Mr. Miller, is libs like myself and several other good faith libs, whenever Trump has signed things without any question or any debate or anything, we refer to him as Hitler. And
well, they
now,
did the same thing to George Bush, though.
But what I don't understand is why are the libs now asking Hitler to take their guns away?
Well, your name is Liberal Steve, so you would have to ask your ilk.
You didn't get the joke. You want to call somebody Hitler, you don't ask them to take your guns away later. Come on.
It worked for Hitler.
Can you put a little chuckle in your life there, son?
Keep going. You've got to work for it.
Tea Party Bob, you stay fired up too, man. You sound a little riled up over this castle doctrine, man. Take a breath. Anyway, stay fired up. I got to run, man. I just had to get that in. Bye.
Well, compelling commentary. Traffic and weather together. Our time is 8:55. You know, as other people are yapping, if you will, I want to share with you a couple thoughts from our friend at Tucker Carlson. Remember, when you hear Fox News on the radio, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio.
We won't go on. But the shortcomings of this administration are clear. They're usually worth it, though, for two reasons. First, the ideas the president ran on are basically right. America First ought to be the operating principle of every American administration. By definition, it's an American administration. America should be first. But that's not the motto of most administrations, not even hardly. Second, the alternatives to what we have now are scary and getting scarier. The Democratic Party is completely irresponsible and increasingly anti-American. They prefer illegal aliens to our middle class. That's true, and it's terrifying. And someone needs to defend the country from these people. Trump mostly does that. So for these reasons, most of the president's supporters have stuck by him no matter what has happened, and a lot has happened. But there's a limit to the tolerance. They will not tolerate, and they shouldn't have to tolerate, by the way, betrayal on the core promises of his campaign. And that seems to be happening on guns, unfortunately. A few days ago, the president called for raising the minimum age for buying a gun to 21. By the way, that's 4 years after we let people join the military. They can join at 17. But he's saying you can't buy a gun until you're 21. Now, nobody's even arguing this will save actual lives, because there's no research that it will. It's propaganda, and it's sneaky propaganda, by the way. It's an incremental step toward more gun restrictions. That's all it is. And then yesterday, the president went even further than that. He met with lawmakers to talk gun control at the White House. At that meeting, he went after Republicans who want to defend the Second Amendment, suggesting they're puppets of the NRA. At one point, the president said the government should, quote, take the guns first, go through due process second. Now, I mean, how honest do you want to be? Imagine if Barack Obama had said that. Just ignore due process and start confiscating guns. Well, Obama would have been denounced as a dictator. We would have denounced him first, trust me. Congress would be talking impeachment right now. Some would be muttering about secession. Well, the media agreed with what the president said yesterday, so they've underplayed it, or they presented it as just a little battle between the president and the NRA. But it's not about the NRA. It's not even about the president. It's about the Constitution. And the Constitution.
There we have it from our friend Tucker Carlson, echoing the comments that we had last week as the libs continue to go for our guns. One thing's for certain, your voice, your freedom, always welcome here with me, Kevin Miller, on KIDO Talk Radio. Please invite friends. Please share. We continue to work to keep this forum going, to get the message out, needed now more than ever. You know, when President Trump won, we thought it was over, and it is the never-ending battle for liberty and freedom, and, of course, the Idaho way. Nehemiah, great job as always. May God bless you and your family, my friends, and keep the faith. Fox News next on your home for Fox News on the radio, KIDO Talk Radio.